So, hello and welcome to the second Ink Think Collaborator series on the topic of brand purpose, or purpose even, with Andrea Gamson. So, the work landscape is shifting in ways we are yet to understand. Partly driven by circumstance, partly driven by individuals seeking more purpose from their employment. Social starters and Andrea for that matter, was so instrumental in helping me take the jump into more of an entrepreneurial path. And it was initially fueled by a desire to give back, immerse myself in another culture and grab some more me time. Whether we like it or not, we all act as brands today as a result of the prevalence of social media. Finding one's purpose seems to be the focus of so much self-development conversation these days as we strive to find more meaning in life. It's often the founder's purpose which gets adopted as a fledgling brand's purpose and becomes central to an organization's culture. I've always been drawn to brands with strong purpose and culture. How many times can you say put purpose in the same sentence, eh? And believe it plays a key role in inspiring people to believe in something bigger than themselves and follow through. In the second part of our series on purpose, we speak to Andrea about her experience and tips in this area. Hello and welcome, Andrea. Lovely to have you again.
Thanks, Nick. Hey, and what a week to be having this chat. And great introduction. I almost feel like I want to turn the tables and interview you and hear all about your career journey. Way more interesting.
Hey, thank you. So let's start with a little question about social starters. So what is social starters' purpose?
What is social starters' purpose? Well, as a purpose-driven organization, the purpose sits right at the heart of everything we do. It's so integral. And I think the best way to try and describe it is to say that it's like it's an intent. We have an intent to create, in our case, a positive or positive social or environmental impact. And we do it because we recognize that there are hundreds of thousands of entrepreneurs out there who are like-minded and who are prioritizing their purpose, their mission, their cause, if you will. They're prioritizing that alongside or over the creation of profit. But they have a lot of things that they're doing, a lot of things on their plate that are holding them back, because being an impact maker, you've got to run a business like any other business, but then you also have to deliver on your impact and be able to measure that and report the stories of that impact to make sure that you're on point with it. And so we recognize that these types of entrepreneurs, they're almost like unicorns. They're very special, but they have some real challenges around skills, money, and time. So our purpose is to try and plug those gaps around those challenges, and we do it by bringing them mentors and consultants and training and tools and support that enables them to chip away at those three core challenges of skills, money, and time.
Amazing. I love the analogy with unicorns. I think the world needs a lot more unicorns at this point in time, particularly from that perspective. And the thing I found working with yourself and social starters was it was very much a family. There was this family intent around this topic. So that's brilliant. Thanks for sharing that. So what does a purposeful career mean to you?
Yeah, I think it's important to separate out this idea of purpose, and then the idea that I'm quite biased when I talk about this is of like social and environmental impact, because they're aligned, but they're also two different concepts. So a purposeful career, if you will, would then be one that's perhaps hanging off that notion of having intent. You're driven by a desire to work towards something, I think, to take your phrase, that's bigger than yourself. You don't just get out of bed every day and go to work to make money and to get that bonus at the end of the month or quarter. You are seeking or have sought out a career that really matters to you. It's central to your core values. It represents who you are as a person, and therefore you approach the work that you do not as a job, but it's very much an embodiment of everything that you're about. And so you're able to get what we call that duvet flip, right? That moment where you get out of bed in the morning and you're excited to go and do your work.
Amazing. I love that. The duvet flip. I think you're so right. Values now are so much more, I say more, I mean, who knows, but they seem to be a lot more entangled these days in what we do for work and who we are as a person, perhaps in ways that haven't been the case in the past.
Well, you raise a valid point, because if you think about it, if you're not values aligned, so your values, if you're unclear, are the things that you hold most dear, the things that matter to you the most, the way you want to live your life, right? If you're doing work that is not in alignment with those values, it's going to create tension.
Mm.
And that tension, you might not be able to articulate it, but you'll certainly be able to feel it.
Mm.
So unvalues aligned professionals or people tend to be very frustrated, feeling unfulfilled. They feel very stuck. They may even get depressed or feel anxious. And so if you're watching this and you feel that way, maybe check in with your values and what really matters to you about what you do with your life and the world, and see if you're in alignment with that. Because it's such a huge awakening to realize this piece of work, and that often is the trigger point, the catalyst that sends people on a path to exploring what their purpose is. Why are they here? What are they supposed to be doing with their time? How can they exist in a way that feels really meaningful and matters?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I was watching a do lecture actually with Ella Luna recently, who's got this talk on should versus must, which was really interesting. And she talks about 3 different areas. So job, obviously, which is exchange for money, which is what we're all doing, right? But then you've got the career aspect, which is effectively a system for you to get through promotions and the like. And then she talks about the final piece, which is your calling, which could be tied along purpose, right? And I think what she says, which is interesting, is that these don't have to be separate as they have been in the past. We can combine these. And as you're saying with the values piece, it's really important actually that we do combine these. We do have to make money. We live in a society where money is required, but they don't have to live separately. So I think that's an interesting analogy.
Yeah, I think you've summed it up really well and put it in a bit of a framework. There is another tool that we like to use, which is a Venn diagram based framework, if you will, that's called the Ikigai. And within it essentially finds that sweet spot for you that brings together, it's like the intersection of the causes and the things you're most passionate about, what you love doing, where your skills are, and where there is opportunity to get paid to do something.
Brilliant.
It's a really, really useful tool for anybody that's starting out at the beginning of thinking about what this purposeful career might look like.
I think a purposeful career could be meaning, so having meaning, but it can also be giving to a purpose, right? So there's the 2 different sides to that, I guess.
Yeah, I read a similar Gallup poll where it said that I think 86% of people are in some way unhappy or unfulfilled in their work, which is a huge number. It essentially means that the majority of people are not going to work feeling a sense of aliveness. They're not feeling joy. They're not going and, really engaging in what they're doing in a really meaningful way, which is just incredibly shocking because it implies that on the most part, professionals are very unhappy at work.
Yeah,
that's a problem that corporate firms need to really address.
Yeah, I'm so glad you used that word aliveness, because that's actually one of the words which I used to describe my experience when I was working as a consultant with social starters in Brazil. I just felt so alive. And I think at the end of the day, if you can't feel alive, what's the point, to so many degrees? And that comes with an element of discomfort. But I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I think that's such an important part of anything, and particularly your work career.
Well, maybe that is the true purpose, Nick, of being alive, is to feel alive, because we'll have hundreds of years where we're going to be dead and we won't be feeling alive. So, there you go, solved for everybody. There's everybody's calling. You need to go and feel alive. Otherwise, what's the point? Yeah,
absolutely.
But the only way to do that is to get out of one's comfort zone. So, we were talking about this earlier. We have to put ourselves in positions where we feel uncomfortable at times in order to be able to stretch ourselves and put us in new positions where we then become more open-minded to trying new things. Like, for example, going to Brazil for many, and going and working, you know, in the favela communities with, you know, somebody whose first language is not your own. That's an incredibly out there experience that you had, isn't it?
It was remarkable.
So, you know, not everybody would embrace that, Nick, because it would seem just a little bit too much of a challenge.
Yeah, no, completely. So the next question is a bit of a fun one. What's been your biggest career challenge and how did you overcome it?
Nice segue. So my biggest career challenge, aside from doing all of the uncomfortable stuff, like going to work with, you know, waste disposal communities in slums in Western Kenya, which was really challenging, helping them try and work out how they could garner more money for their waste disposal truck from an already incredibly impoverished community. I think taking several steps back, like how did I even get to that point where I was doing that type of work? I had to really go to what I call the hole. You know, for me, the hole was that dark place where you just feel incredibly frustrated and unsure of what you could even do with yourself, with your skills and talent. And you don't even know that there's this whole other world out there of possible work that you could be doing. Because in some regards, I think when you have a career, you're somewhat invested in that industry or that sector or that type of work. And in my case, it was sales, and I was working in sales in the advertising industry. You know, and eight to 10 years in, you're, you know, you're pretty entrenched and you have certain walls around you, metaphorical, of course. And, you know, you're trying to push those walls, or that famous glass ceiling that we often talk about. But because you have no idea what's on the other side of it, you just feel like you can only work within what you've got. And so for me, I used to, you know, set up anti-drink drive campaigns or create Earth Day awareness events and do what I can within these confines that I felt like I was restricted within. But it just wasn't enough, because I think I had this innate belief that I, you know, could do more. I could do something that really mattered. And I don't know if that was an ego thing or not, but I just didn't necessarily appreciate or understand what that could be yet. And so it was a really dark place. That's why I call it the hole, because it had so much uncertainty. And I think that for me was the biggest challenge, was the not knowing. And so now it's easy for me to say that looking back, because I found a way to climb myself out of that hole. But I know there are so many people in it. But the beautiful thing about that, whilst it sounds a bit bleak, is that it's so painful it becomes a catalyst. And catalysts are the best thing that can ever happen to us, because when you feel extreme pain, you then, you know, you do something about it, because no one wants to sit and swim in that level of discomfort.
Yeah, 100%. I remember very much being in the hole, and it was funny. Despite having some incredible colleagues that I worked with, I just felt that I needed to be doing something different that gave more impact, like you said. It was part of a bigger picture. And for me, it's funny, like I felt like there was for a long time, I felt there was no opportunity to escape, which is what I think you talk about as well in terms of this hole, right? There's no way out. But in fact, there's always a way out. But that can often seem quite uncomfortable. So
yeah. And what you don't appreciate at the time is that actually it's you that's stopping yourself from getting out of it. It's entirely all you.
Yeah.
So that then reinforces the fact that it's so important to watch conversations like this and be exposed to other people who felt the same way as you, and then slowly start to gain the tools, the strategies, and the awareness of what you need to be doing to slowly inch your way out of it. You know, and it's a process of testing and learning. Taking leaps of faith, like you did when you went to Brazil. All of these little experiences and these new insights that you gain, and networks that you create where you're around other like-minded people on the same journey, or they've been successful in their endeavors to evolve their careers and transition into something that matters for them. You know, it's until you do that you probably will stay down there in that hole. But the good news is that we're out there and we're around, and we're able to hold, you know, everybody's hands and help them on their way.
Yeah, and I think what you touch on there is something I found as well, is that once you step into more of an entrepreneurial field, there is a community that almost comes together to help support you at the same time, certainly in the areas that you're working in and in some of the areas I'm working in as well. So.
Yeah, I think probably the community and the network, that purpose-driven network, is one of the side effects or the side pieces that come with doing one of our programs that our program participants talk about as being the most beneficial. Because if you think about it, there's that, Jim Rohn quote of how you're the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And that in itself is quite a contemplative quote that forces a lot of people to realize, oh, hang on a minute. If I'm not surrounded by people who are smashing those glass ceilings, who are creating the life that they want for themselves, who are happy and fulfilled and doing work that really matters, feeling a sense of aliveness, if you're not surrounded by those people, and if you're the average of that, then no wonder you're feeling the way you feel, right? Completely. So building that purpose-driven network of other like-minded people or successful people who are living the life that you dream about is an incredible strategy, right? For immediately starting to pull yourself up into higher echelons, if you will, of success.
Absolutely. And that leads really well into the next question, which is, how do you instill purpose with your teams or the people you work with?
Yeah. Well, we have a very small team of purpose-driven individuals who are doing this type of work because it's where they've, positioned themselves in their own careers. But as a manager or a leader, whatever word feels most appropriate, I suppose I take it upon myself to check in with them on a relatively regular basis to make sure that they are continuing to work in a space and do work that brings them all of the right, the right feelings. I think it's important to create space for them to put their own ideas forward and say, as an organization, like, could we be doing more of this? Or can we focus on making this type of impact? We're very open as an organization for that level of co-creation from within our teams.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about co-creation. I think giving teams or people you work with, however you want to refer to it, employees or whatever the arrangement is, giving them responsibility to be able to create is really important.
So stretching that a bit further outside of our core team and into, our program participants, who we call consultants. They are business consultants who come on board onto our career development program. It's a 3-month process, 2 to 3 month process. And they become a team. They become part of Social Starters. They are like an extension of our core team, if you will. And so whilst they will have their work modules that they are, striving to achieve milestones on, and they've got a client where they're working on a live project, and so they are going through a relatively structured program. There is space within that for them to come forward and work on side projects, either of their own or that Social Starters has put out there for them to support us on. And so there's this additional element of, helping and supporting our program participants to step outside of the body of work that they've been assigned in that role of consultant, and start to flex that creative muscle, that curious muscle that they've got, try other things out or lend their skills. The hope then really is that whilst they're working on a core business assignment, so for example, it was a marketing assignment coming from a marketing background, they might then also get to try something that's completely different. It could be that we've got a couple of consultants at the moment that are working on a deal flow proposition, which is fancy terminology within the startup world, that is essentially about pulling together a deck, say, of businesses that we support who are going after investment, and being able to build that proposition so we can go to investors that come to us and have a way of giving them a window into the opportunities within our world with the clients that we support. And that might be something completely different than what they would normally do. And you never know, it might open up new avenues for them.
Yeah, I remember one of my first meetings with my client in Brazil on what would you call it, on the project that I was assigned to, and feeling really uncomfortable, not knowing, because I was looking at her, I was almost acting as a personal coach on occasions, and that was really, it made me feel really alive, and it really pushed me into spaces where I wasn't comfortable. But it was incredible, you know, at the end of the day I came up with answers. So it's amazing how when pushed, you don't need to.
Yeah, you know more than you think you know. We all do. And a lot of skills are so transferable. It just requires creativity and being brave enough to decide how something needs to be done. There isn't always, you know, hard and fast rules to these things. Yeah, and so I think creating a safe space for people to be creative, to have a go at something. The amount of times I get asked, like, how do I do this? And I say to our, you know, program participants, well, why don't you do it the way you think it should be done? And let's work from there. Let's see what you create, and then you know, we'll build on that.
Yeah.
What do you think the three? Sorry, but what do you think? Like, say, the three biggest things you learned about yourself were when you were on that assignment in Brazil.
I think the first was that I know more about. I know more than I think I know, and that my knowledge can extend into fields that I never thought it could possibly extend into.
Interesting.
And I think the final piece was a leadership piece, coaching piece. I hadn't really understood quite how valuable that skill was. Because effectively what I used to do in my corporate career, there was an element of coaching in the everyday world of that role, but it wasn't what my job title was. And the assignment in Brazil really brought that to the fore, made me really realize that actually that was so key.
Because we look to leaders and we look at them as, you know, they're up on a pedestal. They're these gurus, right? They know so much. They're so wise. They're so confident. You know, they don't feel any fear. They're not vulnerable at all. And we then don't seem to align with that idea of what we think a leader is, and then never view ourselves in that way. And I recall the first time I saw my own leadership potential was when I was starting my MBA a couple of years ago, and I was chosen to be the team leader of a group of 25 going through this crazy participatory exercise that had to lead to the sale of planes to the Chinese. It was some crazy situation where we had teams of people making paper planes in a factory line setting. We went on one, and I mean, I actually went from, this is my like leadership and confidence journey. I went from being assigned team leader to then looking for the nearest exit, to imagining what I was going to say when I never returned, to then my entrepreneurial thinking kicking in, and then building a team of experts, you know, and I had people in my team who, you know, were high up in the military and the US Navy and all sorts. And so I just outsourced everything to people who knew what they were doing. I had a guy that worked at Apple in manufacturing, so I had him down on the shop floor, and it was amazing because by the end we went on and won and was the, you know, the best performing team out of everybody. And so I just think that you have to put yourselves in these terrifying situations sometimes to really learn who you are and what you're capable of.
Yeah. And where you don't know, you either ask or you outsource to somebody who doesn't.
Absolutely. It's all about, you know, pooling experts and bringing knowledge in, you know, it's that co-creation process, isn't it?
And I think, you know, I was just thinking about what a purposeful career means to me, aside from value alignment. I think the other piece is this element of learning, you know, and I think that's what most people are looking for in a career is there's an element of learning, but also recognition as well. So, you know, learning so that you feel like you're constantly on this journey. Then I think recognition is important, and it goes much further in many respects than money. If people are recognized, I think I've read research that, you know, they're so much more loyal to the business and more likely to go the extra mile. And then trust, I think, which is also touching on what we were just talking about in terms of co-creation, because if you're allowing somebody to co-create, then there's a huge amount of trust in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is then where that thinking about building networks comes in, because the more expertise you have within your circles, the more you can lean on it to pool resources and maybe take on the role of a facilitator in any process. You don't need to know everything. And, you know, we talk about fake it till you make it. And some people are terrified of that because they want to wait till they're, you know, they're perfect or they've got X number of years experience before they go off and say, become a social enterprise consultant in the case of the world that we're in. But not at all. You know, I think Richard Branson said, if you don't know how to do something, but an incredible opportunity comes your way, just say yes and then figure out how to do it later. And whilst that might sound terrifying to most, you know, we've built a business model around that idea. 6 years ago when we first started, we had no idea what we were doing. We've got a slightly better idea of it now, but we've created a safe space for lots of other people to come and play and experiment and be prepared to fail and learn from that failure. Because as you say, you learn, and learning is such an important part of anyone's career development and, you know, self-belief, building that trust, like you say. We have to have that trust within ourselves to know that we can make smart decisions. But to do that, you have to have tools and strategies and methodologies. And so that is what you then come to learn when you join our program.
Brilliant. That feeds really well into the next question. So who are your top 3 to 5 recommendations, or what? Who or what are your top 3 to 5 recommendations for career development learning resources?
Yes. Well, my journey almost started by joining a program with Escape the City, which was for startups. This was about 6-7 years ago. And now Escape the City, which began as a newsletter of the top 10 opportunities to escape the city, literally. Leave your career in banking or finance behind and go and join an NGO in Botswana. They've stayed with me and with Social Starters throughout. So their program helped us launch back in 2014. And now we recruit through them. So what's so great about them is that they now have a lot of digital courses, relatively reasonably priced, where you can, you know, build out your CV in the right manner or know exactly where to look for the right opportunities. So aside from Escape the City, I'd also recommend quite a lot. Our consultants have been through the Career Shifters program, which is a deeper dive into who you are as a person. So you get to explore those value pieces there. That's a year-long program. And then my personal coach, I want to pimp him out, Dan Beverley. He's so great. I call him the goal master. Although his quote recently, which I think he stole from somebody else, was, you know, don't have goals, have systems. And that's so true. So if you want to create a system that's going to lead you to success, Dan can coach you through, or he's got lots of videos on his YouTube channel, which you can access for free. But what's so, I guess, useful to know is that we as a team and Social Starters have gone out and, you know, learned from all of these amazing experts and then combined that knowledge into our immersion program. And so if you don't have a year to go on a deep dive, or you haven't got the patience for doing multiple short online courses, then the immersion program gives you all of, you know, the best of that, the essential strategies over 8 to 10 weeks.
Brilliant. Yeah, and I think Escape the City is actually the way I found you as well. So, and they do a brilliant program on career change, I think, which is really insightful.
Yeah, but sadly at the moment they've had to pop a lot of that all on pause because of the current, the current situation that we find ourselves in. But likewise, you know, we're taking all of our knowledge and putting it out of our brains into digital learning as well. So from 2021, there'll be ways to essentially pay a small fee and get access to me and my team's best methodologies for success.
Incredible. So then in a world where entrepreneurialism is the new black, what key skills do you think entrepreneurs need to be successful at to grow their business?
Well, I think we all need to apply entrepreneurial thinking to all of our endeavours, because it's a process of, building things in measured ways without putting in so much investment that if you fail, it's catastrophic. And from that, then you test and learn. And I love this idea of applying entrepreneurial thinking to our lives. But given that we have lots of entrepreneurs in our network who are perhaps facing challenges at the moment that they could never have anticipated on January the 1st when we entered this new decade. you know, what they'll do well to remember is how much resilience that they've got, how much creativity and innovation, you know, the right skills to be able to take a challenge that could feel really catastrophic at first and turn it to your advantage. You know, real true entrepreneurs are able to bounce back pretty quickly. They're able to make like bold choices. It's not necessarily about being a squirrel and, you know, holding every penny that you've got, you know, close to your chest and not spending. They'll know to spend in the right ways to create incremental shifts that mean you invest in building new audiences or testing new products. It's really important at the moment to recognize where something just isn't going to be right for the market, you know, where your product might need to be put on ice for a while and you might need to pivot into something else. We have a few clients who had products for the festival market, you know, sustainable, environmentally friendly glitter, for example. There just isn't a place for that in the world at the moment. So one of our clients in particular has done brilliantly at shifting into becoming an agency actually for doing Instagram shoots with brands. I mean, what a brilliant smart pivot, and she's making money doing that.
Amazing. I'm probably enjoying it as well.
Enjoying it. So yeah, just to summarize, I suppose it's around that agility, the flexibility, you know, responsiveness, making smart decisions, still investing where you need to, and you know, being bold.
Yeah,
it's really important, isn't it, to be bold in this moment in time, and you know, just get yourself out there.
And I suppose even for those who aren't interested, in becoming entrepreneurs, it's important to have this mindset, because we live in an uncertain world. It's just important to be able to adapt quickly and be resilient regardless. So, you know, we talk about having multiple careers or multiple jobs, but I think it is just important to look at it through that lens as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is in some regards the best time to go out and be a self-starter or a social starter, because, you know, you got to get ahead. You know, create your job or your future career now, rather than in a few years' time when it might even be a tougher climate to do that. Like, get ahead. You know, get ahead of yourself. If you know that it's deep down, this is what you want to be doing, then don't waste any more time. There's so many resources out there. There's funding and support. Crowdfunder recently were you know, match funding any fundraising that was made by women starting new businesses, and like that's just one example of many. So yeah, it's actually quite exciting. Yeah.
Brilliant. And what are the key reasons for people to sign up to the immersion program at Social Starters?
Well, we're currently running our autumn cohort, and the next one will be in spring 2021. These are virtual programs, so you can do them from anywhere in the world, from the comfort of your sofa, or even, you know, from under your duvet in bed, should the need arise. You know, I think the main thing to get across on this one is, if you are, you know, thinking that you might like to be a consultant, working for yourself, doing things on your own terms, making a positive impact in the world, exploring your purpose, if you're yearning to do something that really matters and have that feeling of aliveness and contributing somehow positively to the, you know, the state of the world that we find it in at the moment, whether it's social, environmental, political, economic, then, you know, follow that. That's your inner voice trying to tell you something. So go, you know, forth and start to investigate what that could look like, and do it in the safety of a, you know, peer group of like-minded professionals, all going on the same journey together. I think it's a safety and security thing to join a program, isn't it? Because if you go out and do it all on your own, the doubts will creep in and the uncertainties might overwhelm you sometimes. But if you're led and facilitated through a process, then you'll get the methodologies and the tools, those strategies that we talk about, that will lead you to exploring your ideas in, you know, in measured ways.
Yeah, it's an opportunity to dip a toe in the water, isn't it? Which is
exactly. Like, it's very low risk, because you can always go back to doing what you were doing before. You know, your skill set, if you've got 15 years experience in, you know, auditing, you know, legal, brand development, you name it, you can always go back to doing that at any time. But taking a short career break. It might be something that you land in. You maybe take voluntary redundancy, or you're preparing going back to work after maternity leave. Perhaps you've taken early retirement, or this really is a chosen career break or a sabbatical. Then use that time really wisely to build your confidence and test something out and see how it lands for you. See if you like this unstructured, crazy, creative environment. It's not for everybody, but on the whole, 76% of our program participants go on to land their, their next purpose-driven role that's paid within 4 months of leaving the program.
Brilliant. And so that brings me on to the next question. What do you look for in consultants? Do you look for anything? Is there any particular skill set?
We have a parameter which is around 3 core disciplines of business, which are marketing, operations, and finance. So whether you sit under any of these pillars, we're very, if you do sit under them, we're very open to looking at your application. But what we're really looking for are people with empathy, with an understanding that the small business environment will be very different to that of a large corporate. And fundamentally, it's about seeking out purpose. It's about looking for solutions to global problems. They need to have that desire to do that. And not just inclination, but also have the time. So our program is part-time. It's 2 to 3 days a week over, a 10-week period. So that's really important, but you can fit it around the work that you might already be doing. So it's fairly flexible. But yeah, if you've got a thirst for knowledge, if you want to learn about social entrepreneurship or consulting methodologies, or discover what it takes to start a business or a social impact business, then, our program will cover off all of those things.
Great. Well, that brings us to a close, Andrea. That was really good. Really interesting. Thank you. And of course, if anybody has any questions, then you can reach out directly to Social Starters. The link will be in the bio. And we look forward to hearing from anybody. Thank you so much.
We're actually testing an idea. Can I talk about it really quickly?
Yeah, of course. Go for it.
So we get a lot of skilled professionals coming to us at this transitionary place where, as you know, Nick, you've done your, 15, 20 years, and then you say, okay, I'm not necessarily ready to start my big business or my product-driven business, but I want to be a consultant and, do life a little on my own terms and get the clients that I want to work with. And so there's something about this space that's really interesting to us. And I'm testing an idea that will potentially start in December, which is called the Start Me Up Accelerator. And it's specifically for social impact or sustainability consultants who are either right at the beginning of their journey, they literally have an idea, or they have started to test it and they're ready to go and secure their first clients. And we would like to bring them together in a small group and coach them through getting it, from that seed of an idea into a viable business proposition. So if that appeals to anybody that's watching this, then tell them to reach out to me on Andrea@socialstarters.org and we can have a chat.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Andrea. And we look forward to tuning in with you for the next time we catch up on the Think Collaborate series. Thank you very much.